Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. For many of us who want to maintain optimal health, we feel that a regular visit to our doctors should be good enough, especially when it comes to things like testing, to find out just exactly what our bodies are telling us about our health. But would you be interested to know that a lot of these tests, including blood chemistry analysis, generally references the results against people who may be at moderate to maybe even poor or even unhealth? Well, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is one of the few doctors and naturopaths who are versed in what is known as functional blood chemistry analysis. She knows how to order appropriate and comprehensive panels which are compared to people who are actually healthy to create normal ranges. The functional normal ranges are much narrower than their conventional counterparts. And when a patient's levels fall outside functional ranges but within conventional ranges, you can note a red flag for imbalance. She is a health and lifestyle expert who is internationally recognized as an authority on autoimmunity, functional blood chemistry analysis, thyroid and gut health, as well as family wellness and dealing with extreme exhaustion, and certainly preaches that food should be your best medicine. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Kristen Grace. Kristen, thank you for being on the program today.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, it's always a wonder to come, I guess you might say, outside the norm or the box, as everybody likes to say, although I get tired of hearing that cliche. But the fact is, when you think about testing and going to the doctor, that's something you really don't think about, you know, that the results are compared to maybe results that are what it could be anywhere from average to below average. And that's kind of alarming to think about it when your doctor comes back and says, you're in good shape. Well, compared to what?
Exactly. First, I'd like to share that I'm not an MD or a naturopath. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, and I'm certified in functional medicine. And it's actually in Oriental Medical School that I began learning about blood chemistry. And we had a whole semester on different topics in Western medicine and different kinds of testing, and then we had many other semesters in biochemistry and having to learn about the human anatomy and different things. And that's where I began to understand where these reference ranges were coming from. And then when I began studying functional medicine, functional health care, was when things really opened up for me. I had suffered from an illness for a really long time that went undiagnosed and misdiagnosed. And on my own journey of learning functional blood chemistry analysis, I understood that my own labs had been really misunderstood and at times not even interpreted properly. And it really lit a passion in me to begin to empower and educate other healthcare consumers and providers about some of the discrepancies that I had found.
You know, and it's not so unusual, but you also think of our health system. It's either stressed or it's understaffed. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on there, and sometimes doctors don't spend the kind of time perhaps that they need to, and for obvious reasons. But let's talk about testing itself in this functional blood test analysis that we're talking about. What exactly is this that people should be aware of?
Great. Thank you for asking. So when I look at a blood chemistry lab, I'm wanting to see about 70 markers plus a urinalysis. The standard that we're often seeing in Western medicine and even with naturopaths is they're bound to standards of care, they're bound to insurance companies paying for certain labs, and you'll usually only get around 10, maybe as many as 30 markers on your annual blood test. And although the doctors and naturopaths are very well-intentioned and they really do want to do a good job, they often don't have the tools to offer you more than that. And it's quite limiting. So that's the first challenge, is that usually not an adequate amount of labs will be tested. The second challenge are those reference ranges that you mentioned. The reference ranges usually come from hundreds of thousands of people who get sick every year. They go to their doctor, their naturopath. The doctor says, go get some labs done. They write a lab requisition. The patient goes to get that done. And then those reference ranges from all of those people are compiled and averaged. And if the majority of people having their labs done are going because they're sick, we're actually using those sicker reference ranges and averaging them to determine what our new normals will be. And if I'm comparing someone's lab to someone who's most likely sick or unwell or having symptoms or even a suspicious disease, then to me that's not good enough, and you're not getting holistic and the kind of comprehensive care that I believe you deserve. So 2 issues, the number of markers being ordered and how they are compared to healthy ranges. The third challenge is that many docs are taught to look at isolated numbers. So I'm just going to look at total cholesterol, or I'm just going to look at TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And they're not necessarily taught to look for many patterns. And in functional healthcare, that's also something that sets the way we look at a lab apart from the conventional way, is that we're looking at many different kinds of patterns that can show, say, dehydration or insulin resistance or other hormone imbalances. For example, if I order or if I want to see a full thyroid panel, that includes 10 markers of thyroid function. And those usually are not covered under insurance. And I have to beg most endocrinologists to order that full panel. And it gives us tremendous information about the underlying issues that may be impacting full body metabolism, hormones, thyroid function, pituitary function, how your adrenals are functioning. We get a lot of information from that full panel, and it can inform a more holistic treatment that not only addresses symptoms, but can really get to the root of what's going on.
So what's going on then with these medical professionals that they want to limit the testing, or what's actually happening there? What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, well,
is it because maybe
first,
they're bound by insurance companies telling, well, we're going to do this, but you're going to stick the rest of the client kind of a thing? I mean, that seems to be the big argument, not that we're going to go that direction, but, here's this middleman and people depending on this middleman to basically do less than what's necessary. It sounds like.
It's true, and I started off in Western medicine, and I really like Western medicine. I think it has a very appropriate and important place in our healthcare system.
I really agree with you. I just wanted to note that. I remember when I first started this show like a decade or two ago, all those rottenness and that, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, wait, these people are doing the best they are with it in the confines of the game rules. That's all they're doing. You can't blame them. So how then?
Exactly.
So over the last 10-plus years, I've been pointing the finger back at the people screaming and yelling and saying, but what personal responsibility are you taking? If you know this and we're giving you this information to explore, to study, then you are now responsible for your, for the answers you're looking for. Don't blame your doctor, the pharmaceutical company, all those guys. It's up to you. It's out there and it's available. That's what we're telling you. So anyway, go ahead.
Yes, and you're giving such wise information. You're spot on, Daniel. So there are a couple of challenges. One of the challenges I've faced is the system. And the system does have very specific standards of care that are meant to help people. They're meant to protect people so that everyone's getting the same kind of care and no one gets better care than anyone else. But it also limits care, unfortunately. And the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies really do inform the curriculum of medical schools, which is one of the reasons why there's not a focus of food as medicine, which is still a little bit surprising to me, because without food, the human body cannot really run for very long. We need to put nutrients, micronutrients and macronutrients, into our physical bodies for every single system in our body to continue running. And I believe it should be more of a focus in medical school curriculum to talk about food and food as medicine, and not only rely on pharmaceuticals. So that's one of the challenges, is the system. And I believe that doctors really want to help people. They went into medicine because they're very passionate about helping people for the most part. But the system limits them in many regards. And they're doing the best with the tools they have. Insurance doesn't want to pay for 70 lab markers and a urinalysis because it's far too preventative. And the system is much more of a symptom care system than an ultimate or truly health care system. We're treating sickness. The system is treating illness and disease. They're not necessarily focused on prevention. And a truly comprehensive functional blood chemistry analysis, to me, is the ultimate in prevention, because I can find things often 5 to 10 years before you may have a diagnosis or even a symptom. I can find things before they sneak in to create suffering in your world. And to me, that's amazing. And we can also find things after there's been a diagnosis. We can find the root of why that disease pattern or that symptom has chosen to express itself in that way through your physical body. So that's another amazing tool that functional benefit that functional blood chemistry analysis offers us. We get to look into your body in a completely different way that really empowers you, the health consumer, with knowledge. And knowledge is power, and it informs appropriate action. Whether you need to drink more water because you have signs of chronic dehydration, which can lead to many disease patterns, or you need to change your diet or your eating habits or something in your lifestyle. Maybe you need to go to bed an hour earlier, and that'll make a huge difference in how your cortisol is surging through your body. There are so many details that, unfortunately, the current system doesn't have the tools to educate you about. And this gives us an opportunity to really dive deeper and help you, the consumer, be informed. It really takes the guesswork out of your health care.
You know, Kristen, it's amazing in the amount of time we've been doing our program. Some of the, I want to say, wild, innovative things that I've had come across that have existed for decades. People, it's like, you watch Dr. Oz and he starts spouting off about some new thing he's discovered. It's like, we were talking about that 5 years ago, and it's been around for about 30 years now, but it's brand new to you and you're a doctor. What's up with that, But not to, pick on him too much, although I don't mind it so much. But the fact is there are a lot of these really unique things out there that are available at everyone's fingertips. Again, it's first of all just being aware that it's out there and then pursuing and doing your homework. And what astonishes me is the conversations that I hear among people as I'm, out there when it comes to health care. Okay, well, it's the insurance company, it's the hospital, it's the doctor, but they never seem to talk about themselves. You'll spend all this time researching the perfect loan for the dream home or the car that you want to drive or the college you think your children should go to, but you won't spend a moment's notice trying to understand how your body functions, how you can get the diagnostics that are available to make it function better so that you can make better decisions. And it astounds me how that part of the conversation is never in there. it's pretty scary when you think about it. Forget about the blame. Why aren't you doing something about this? It's your body.
Yes. Yes. It's true, and I like to empower people, just like you are, Daniel, with information so that they become informed consumers and can really step into their power around their health. And it's also tricky in this incredibly powerful day and age of computers and internet access. There's also a lot of misinformation that people are accessing. And this is why it's so valuable to find healthcare providers who are holistic and integrated and functionally based and wanting to look at your whole health picture, not just tiny little pieces. And the more that we can collaborate with other doctors, other healthcare providers, I think the better it is. I really invite people to create a healthcare dream team. And I actually have a free download of a chapter that I wrote in a book. And it's on my website. It's called Ask Coach. And it educates you, the reader, the consumer of your health, about how to interview a doctor, what questions to ask them, and what answers you should be getting back in order to feel confident that it's a good fit. I think that having or creating a healthcare dream team of different kinds of healthcare providers that really fit your value and will really work with you, and they're not afraid to have a conversation about food, even if they don't have all the answers. I think that's why we create a team of healthcare providers, is because we're not expecting our naturopath or our MD or endocrinologist to know everything or have all the answers. We want to access everyone's genius. And I believe that it's important to take that personal responsibility, like you said, Daniel, and really start educating yourself about your body. And if you're having a symptom, rather than just covering it up with a drug, to begin a journey of finding out what's really going on underneath it. Is there a nutrient deficiency or a vitamin deficiency? Is there an unresolved trauma that's pulling on your fascia, that's influencing your nervous system and causing a subluxation in your spine? What is the root? Is there a hormone imbalance that's causing your TSH to be off? To really become an informed consumer, do your homework, do your research, get second, third, and fourth opinions. Really dive into your own unique body and your biochemistry. It's not going to be like everyone else's. It is unique. So find healthcare providers that honor that and are willing to work with you and work as a team so you're both learning together.
Well, and not to mention, too, and we'll get back to the functional blood chemistry analysis and a lot more about that, but what's really been unique is what's available out there to a lot of people is the biggest concern is cost. And I say, if you develop direct relationships with people, whether it's a dentist or whether it's somebody who works, as a doctor or somebody who's even an auto mechanic, and you work directly with these guys and build a relationship, you would be amazed how much you can truly afford without insurance. And I've always been an advocate of somebody who says, buy insurance for the purpose that it serves. Why do you buy auto insurance? In case you get into a car crash and to prevent from being sued, right? So that's what it's there for. And why people don't think about buying insurance that way, if you get into something that seems catastrophic, where you got a high deductible, but then it pays everything after that. It's pretty incredible. But yet we go the other way. Well, I'm paying the insurance that way I can be covered for the simple things that you should be able to mostly afford to do on your own, such as these blood analysis tests. Let's talk about that, for instance. Not a specific cause or anything, but is it affordable for people to go all the way and maybe go out and do these tests on their own?
Well, it's difficult to do all of them on their own. They would need to find a healthcare provider.
Sure.
There are some online labs that are doing some basic lab things, but most people don't know what combination of panels on a lab that they really need. So doing it on your own without guidance from a trained healthcare provider can be tricky.
And that wasn't the
I
direction
would
I
say
meant
that,
either. It was
okay,
just
got it.
mainly, you're
Yeah.
not going to go out there, hey, man, I'm going to take this and give me 70 panels, at the local 7-Eleven. It's not like that. No, of course you're going to want guidance and reasons behind that, but would you say generally these tests are reasonably affordable to do when they need to be done?
Yes, I believe they are. It depends on what state you're in. Different states have different charges for labs, and I've noticed that sometimes in California labs are much more expensive than they are in other states. It just depends on population and what's happening in that state and with that particular healthcare provider. I believe that even a lab that you get from your doctor, even if it only has 10 markers on it, I provide an analysis sharing information from those 10 to 30 markers that'll knock your socks off. I had someone actually who works with me bring me her lab. She's part of my team because I have books coming out and I travel and I lecture at many different places around the country and in Canada. And so someone on my team said, hey, my doc just ran my lab. And I said, hey, let me take a look at it. And there was maybe 18 to 20 markers on that lab. And I went through it with her and explained it to her, and she was shocked. No one from the doctor's office had offered any kind of explanation or analysis. They just sent her the results, said, yep, it's fine. And actually, she had a lot going on that no one caught. And everything we found, I'd say in about 5 years, would start to cause her symptoms. And we were able to make very simple lifestyle changes, like she was super dehydrated, and she gets headaches. And she wasn't making the connection between dehydration and headaches. So just a very simple shift, like drinking more spring water, has really made a difference in her life. And so even from a few number of markers, we can tell a lot. So that can be very affordable because insurance pays for those few numbers of markers. And then a consult with me on that is very affordable. Now, when we start ordering the larger panels, I do believe it's affordable because I really advocate for acts of self-care and self-love. And I was a single mom, and I had a pretty serious health condition as a single mom and struggled financially, and I still found ways to feed myself and my child and get the lab work that I needed to get done to get the answers that I deserved. So it is affordable, and it can take a little bit of savings depending on your income. I want to acknowledge that what I say might be affordable, somebody else would argue with, and somebody else would say, oh my gosh, you're undercharging. So I'm mindful of that. But in my experience, I like to make it as affordable and accessible as possible. And I do like you had said, Daniel, that personal connection with someone, and I do give people all sorts of perks and benefits for working with me so that they feel incredibly supported and empowered and really getting the answers that they deserve and are confident when they do go back and talk to their doctor or when they do buy a supplement or when they do change their diet. They're confident that it's based on their body, not just a protocol.
Right, yeah, one-size-fits-all situation, no doubt. Now, your story is a unique one, and it would certainly inspire our listeners to understand why you're so passionate about this.
Yes, well, I started out as pre-med at the University of Arizona, and I was an EMT, and I worked in the emergency room for a bit, and I loved Western medicine. I thought I wanted to be a heart surgeon, and I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I was just exploring the sciences, and I was so passionate about helping people. And then I got very, very ill. I had been a competitive bodybuilder. I had been vegan for 8 years. I was very, very athletic and very attuned to my body, or so I thought. And I got very sick and had many, many debilitating symptoms like migraines and dozens of muscle spasms all over my body. I had balance issues. I had gas and bloating and sharp pain in my abdomen often. I had TMJ, jaw pain. I would wake up in the morning after sleeping 14 hours and feel run over by a Mack truck, and I never felt rested. I was really not in a healthy spot for someone who appeared to be so healthy. You know, I was 20 years old, and it just didn't make sense to me. And I was finishing up school, thank goodness, because I'm not sure how I would have entered into full-blown medical school in this condition. I was finishing up my undergrad and had a beautiful baby, and knew that if I was going to raise this child successfully, I needed to get my health dealt with. And I had gone to a lot of different Western medical doctors. Some of them said it was all in my head. They did a couple of labs, very incomplete, and said everything looked fine, and sent me on my way with painkillers and muscle relaxants and antidepressants, which I certainly had a reaction to. I gained 35 pounds. I felt even worse.
That's funny that your doctors would say, you know, that's all in your head.
Yeah.
Well, it's also in other parts of my body. How about that?
Yeah, it's that too, right? Yes, but, you know, I hear this from patients a lot. When doctors don't have the right tools to diagnose something that's what I call under the radar, it's not obvious as a classical disease like diabetes or cancer, then their hands are often tied and they don't have the tools or resources to really get to the root with people. But a lot of other more holistic healthcare providers do. And I began to look for them and seek them out, and I began to learn. And I was also in Oriental Medical School now, and which is a very rigorous program, and raising a child as a single mom. And my amazing mom was helping me. And I began to get chiropractic care, and that led me to acupuncture, and that led me to advanced cranial sacral therapy and to a Qigong practice, and that led me to homeopathy and working with an EAV practitioner. And I began to peel off the layers. I had been formally diagnosed eventually after 2 years of suffering by a rheumatologist, and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, which basically is a fancy word for muscle pain. And they said, well, you're going to have this for the rest of your life, so good luck, do your best. And I thought, no way, that's not going to happen. And so I began to go to all these other kind of alternative-minded healthcare providers, but I'm in Asian medical school, so I'm getting exposure to new things. And I began to peel off the layers. And I got a proper lab done a couple years into Oriental Medical School and had someone else start to interpret that for me. And then I began learning how to interpret according to functional healthcare ranges. And I went back to my previous labs that my physician had ordered, and I found that I had 2 different kinds of anemia that no one had identified. And fixing that made a huge difference in how my body could begin to heal. Anemia can be a real roadblock to healing. I also had a car accident, and I had pain in my body from this car accident because literally my tissues had issues. My tissues were remembering this accident. My nervous system was playing this accident in my physiology over and over again, even though my head had gotten over it. And that was contributing. I was diagnosed with heavy metal poisoning, mercury in particular. I had labs done, I had specialized hair analysis and specialized urine testing done, and everything came back very high in mercury. And I had lived in Chicago and eaten salmon out of Lake Michigan and had a lot of heavy metals in me. And I began to peel off all these layers. I won't go through all of them, but in doing so, the pain in my physical body, all the symptoms began to go away. And I also had some emotional trauma, and I want to mention that because the doctors saying that it was all in my head, they weren't 100% wrong. I had hit my head. There was something in my head.
Right, gotcha.
And there was an emotional component. I had some unresolved trauma that had an emotional impact on me. And I did need to deal with that. That was an important part, but I also had very real physical challenges. And I peeled off those layers and began to have a deeper understanding of what some of the blocks to my healing had been. And have been in practice now 22 years, working with people with these blocks and able to empower others now to peel off the layers of their symptoms to get to the root. And peeling off those layers is in a unique way according to that person's biochemistry, their background, their history, their health goals. There are many factors that inform how we do that. It's not a cookbook, cookie cutter protocol kind of approach. It's very individualized. And I have been symptom free from fibromyalgia for almost 19 years now. 19 and a half years, I think now. And I'm very, very grateful and blessed for that journey. Although in the moment it was miserable and a nightmare, I can look back and really hold gratitude for everything I learned and experienced that I've then been able to help other people.
You know, fibromyalgia, the first time I heard about that was in the 90s, and there was a friend of mine who had that, and it was pretty crazy what the decision was made to deal with this. They actually removed all but 1 foot of her intestine. You know, and to me that seems like, why would they decide that route? And I didn't even know what fibromyalgia is until today. You know, I kind of have an idea. It's just a lot of body pain, I guess. But, you know, I thought to myself, that's such an extreme thing to do, this idea of jumping into surgery to have things removed, you know, just, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because that was a direction you said you were going in the early years to a degree, right?
Yes, I was very much into Western medicine. And again, I believe that the system and the physicians are doing their very best with the tools they have. And fibromyalgia is a very complex pattern. And it manifests in a fairly unique way. And two people with the diagnosis of fibromyalgia can both have muscle spasming and pain coming from different things. So that's an important factor that doctors to consider, is that doctors can't always differentiate that because of their education and the standards of care to which they're bound. I wasn't that person's physician, and so I don't know why they chose to take out the intestines. I have no idea what that process for that particular person was like. And yes, I agree, it does seem extreme. Even if and it's often true that fibromyalgia is often an autoimmune issue or a precursor to an autoimmune issue or full-blown disease. And the intestines are a huge part of that. about 75% of your immune function comes from your gut, your intestines. And I could see if someone's having a lot of intestinal issues, it is the standard in Western medicine to often remove organs. They liken the body to a machine. And in Asian medicine, we look at the body as a garden. And in a garden, everything is very connected and interdependent. The soil influences the growth of the plants. The amount of sun and water influences the growth of the plants. The air temperature does. How things are tended, how things are weeded. Everything is important when you're working in a garden. There are all these factors. But when you view the body as a machine, you can just take out a part and replace that part. There's not the understanding that it influences all the other parts. And
right, I agree with you.
There's just a difference in philosophy there. And so for this particular patient, wow, bless. That sounds like a tragic journey. And I hope she found empowerment and support and all of the gifts and strange wrapping that those symptoms brought. And I hope that our Western medical model is growing such that they can begin to refer out to people like me when they're stuck, when they can't find answers. Maybe they can begin to refer out to people who may have a different perspective. I really believe in that team approach, and I want to work with the Western medical doctors, not against them.
Completely agreed. Like you said, having a team of experts. And, I was just talking about that because surgery seems to be one of those things that, you could be watching a doctor TV show or going into surgery for this. And with everything that I've learned from wonderful people like yourself, or at least had my eyes open to pursue further, to, go and do some of my own homework and find out what are some commonalities that a lot of these people are saying, you kind of go, well, we got to prep them for surgery. And it's like, surgery, okay, well, wait, didn't you think about doing this before? But we realize this is only a 1-hour show, and it's fiction. But still, you can't help but think that people are left with the impression that that's a direction to go, even though these are just actors. and it gets pretty alarming sometimes how confusing it is, which leads to something you brought up earlier about people doing their research, the Internet, and that becomes alarming. And, you'd be intrigued to know, for those who have a good idea about the Internet, how it works and so forth, when you type something into, let's say, Google, they're going to put up the results they think are best for you. And most of the time, those are advertisers for the company themselves. You're not actually really getting true information. It seems the best source is go to the old-fashioned library. At least your journey there is by choice. So...
It's true. It can be a real challenge in this age of information. There is a lot of amazing information out there, but most consumers don't have the education to discern and weed through it all to figure out what's actually true and valuable and what isn't. Some research studies that different patients have brought to me, really confident that this research said this, so it must be true. And if you do just a couple more steps of homework on it, you'll find who funded that research.
Right.
And how did they impact that research? I tell patients, go and get Western medical evaluation. If you need an MRI, please go do it. If you break your arm and you have a bone sticking out of your skin, please go to Western medicine. If you're having a stroke or a heart attack and there isn't someone around who can do neural therapy or homeopathy or immediate acupuncture, go to the ER, by golly. They'll save your life. Mm-hmm. They'll save your life. And then know how to undo some of the damage that they might have caused. And that requires education usually and a lot of experience. And so to work with other healthcare providers that want to educate you and empower you. I don't want my patients to be dependent on me. I want to lift them up so that they can stand in their own power with their healthcare, and I want them to use me as a resource, to use me to learn and grow.
And the other thing, too, Kristen, for people to be mindful of is when you're going out and you're doing this research, are you doing it from your own personal bias? In other words, are there specific answers you're looking for so that your hunt, your journey, if you will, takes you in the direction that you wanted to go in the first place, and you might miss some things in there that were really important. When you say, look, and I found this research, and they come to you, for example, just as you said, well, look, this supports this. Well, weren't you kind of supporting what you were wanting to find in the first place? See, that gets a little tricky too, and so.
It does. And I think as humans, we always have that, right?
That's why
even
the
when
news
we're trying
exists.
not to.
I remember a guest
Exactly.
I had on the program some years back, and he says, you do know why we watch the news, and it was funny. And I said, well, tell me. And he says, because we want to support our biases. And I thought, there's a lot of intrinsic wisdom in that.
It's true, which is why even I have my top few favorite healthcare providers that I go to. Yes, I treat myself all the time, and I also want another set of eyes and hands working with me because we all have blind spots when it comes to ourselves. We all have some kind of bias, and that's just human. And so that, I myself go to other healthcare providers because I want to have extra eyes and opinions and areas of expertise looking at my health picture and helping me prevent future challenges and work with staying as healthy and vibrant as I can now.
And the fascinating thing about a lot of sometimes the feelings people have, for instance, you were talking about headaches and TJM or TMJ, I can't remember what that was called, or aches and pains. Those are usually results of something that have been happening over a fairly good period of time, haven't they?
Yes, it's a really important point. Not many people understand that once you have a symptom or a diagnosis, usually there's been a buildup to that for many, many months to even years, sometimes a decade. And that there are lifestyle and nutritional and even ways of thinking that influence how your body heals. And it's important to have, I'd say, professional and wise eyes looking at that whole picture with you. Are you there, Daniel?
Absolutely. I thought we were cut off there for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, even in today's technology, sometimes that might happen. So, well,
No
this
problem.
is also now. Here's something I want to talk about. Now, we talked about the functional blood analysis testing. Now, here's something that I've been seeing, not necessarily on the horizon. It's been out there for a while. But hair testing, apparently there's that going on. How does what we're talking about here compared to something like that? Is that something you could maybe add to this, or what's going on there?
It is something you can add to it, and I think it is valuable as long as you're working with a trusted lab. You want to find a healthcare provider who has good resources and good tools for you. Hair analysis can be really great for looking at short-term things. So the hair, as it grows, is going to grow out certain things and certain nutrient deficiencies, sometimes heavy metals, if they're being stirred up in your system. If they're already stored in an organ or in fat, usually hair analysis won't find the heavy metal. It just depends. So sometimes things have to be stirred up to get an accurate heavy metal analysis from just hair. That's not my optimal way of testing for heavy metals, but it is accessible and people do it. I do like it for certain nutrient testing, so it can be very valuable. Other kinds of testing, like food sensitivity testing, is incredibly valuable if people have an autoimmune challenge, if they're having mysterious symptoms and aches and pains or gut issues, if they have bloating or gas or interesting pain or hunger stuff, or diarrhea or constipation. Doing a comprehensive stool analysis could be very beneficial as well. So there are lots of different kinds of tests that all fall under functional health care that can really give you answers into what's going on with your body. And they're mostly fairly accessible.
I think, too, though, one of the things I noticed, and this goes back, oh, God, a long, long time ago, is being in a grocery store and seeing what people have in their carts. And what I've been astounded by was how often you'll see food that comes in packages or boxes filling these carts, and very few, raw things where you can identify, well, that's, for instance, spinach and so forth. And, and then you kind of look at the person themselves and realize, well, there's why they look like that, pretty much, And it's funny how something is simple, because we've talked about food, just that change. That doesn't mean you have to get out there and get radical. It took degrees for a person to get to where they are at this point. And it's going to take degrees to get to a different point. It's habit change, lifestyle change, so forth. And I think sometimes people get to this extreme thinking that if I'm going to make this change, it's got to be dramatic. You look at this happening in diets and weight loss. These dramatic habits they think they're going to impose on themselves right now overnight. And then they wonder, well, why hasn't this been successful? And you can just see why we become creatures like that, just after the radical change. And certainly something that you're talking about here seems to be very direct yet subtle at the same time. We're learning about what's going on here, to piece it all together, to see what kind of lifestyle changes may need to be, put into place here for you to have the change that you're looking for.
I agree, Daniel, and I see it all the time. And unfortunately, in standard America, not a lot of people are educated that food is medicine, and so they're not connecting all of the dots when they go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of packaged food that this actually isn't good for their body. They've been taught through TV and social media that Wheaties is really good for you. And that packaged corn, or something, or frozen peas, or that these things are really good for you, and or mixed fruit in corn syrup. Well, I'm getting a fruit in, they think, and I don't blame them. I somewhat blame the media for misinforming people about food in order to have higher sales of particular packaged food products. And it's time, and you're a piece of this movement, Daniel, having a radio show to inform people so they wake up, because it is a consumer-driven market. And if all the consumers were demanding more organic foods at a cheaper price, then we would be getting that. But consumers are still demanding high amounts of sugar and processed food because we're addicted to it for the most part in America. And when that addiction is running and we don't have awareness over it, we are acting as an uninformed consumer, and we're just acting out of a reaction, even if it's biochemical in a sugar addiction, or we're stuffing our feelings with food because there are huge amounts of stress in our country. We are a culture of quick fixes. We want things fast and sweet, and it's the same with food. We want our food fast and sweet, and we don't want to often take the time to shop and prepare healthy meals and sit around a table and have a conversation. Many times we're eating on the go, and it's really impacting the health of our nation. And I'm hoping that by speaking to you, Daniel, and sharing this on your show, that we can help wake up more people and educate more people that food really is medicine. And you could just take baby steps and introduce 2 new vegetables that you've never eaten before this week, and make one of them a leafy green. And you could eliminate 1 sugar food this week and just start to make these baby step changes that have a ginormous impact on your overall health. There are other people that do want to go full tilt and 100%, and they want to do a radical change, and that's okay too. We can work with that as well, but you don't have to do that.
Absolutely. Kristen, it's been wonderful having you on the program. Always lively and enlightening, and again, I always like the approach with people like yourself, where we're not out there, pointing and saying, there's the bad guy, go get him. It's like you've got three fingers pointing back at you. So you're 3 times more responsible for the decisions you make than someone else who may have influenced you to make that decision in the first place. So what do you do from this point? Well, the first thing you can do is certainly go to Kristen's website, which she's going to give you for a minute. Some of the things I was on there looking at, for instance, were really kind of eye-opening. For instance, you have in your blog, gluten-free isn't enough, and here's what's missing. We'll certainly let the listeners kind of go and find out more about that. And that was really an astounding little article that you got there. But what is that website people can find out more about your work, how they can connect with you, even be consulted by you should they choose to, no matter where they are in the world?
It's KristenGraceMcGarry.com, and I'll spell it because my middle name Grace is spelled uniquely. It's KristenGraceMcGarry.com, C-O-M.
And we'll certainly have that on our website as well for a link at beyond50radio.com, the number 50. Kristen, thank you for being on the program, and I look forward to the next time we talk. In the meantime, we'll get out there and see how we can get people to start empowering themselves with better decisions about how their body is and who they are.
Thanks so much for having me, Daniel.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.